What's going on, everybody? We are here with round 2 from the Riley's Retro 2017 NAIC format tournament. We're going to be seeing Jared on the left playing Greninja Break up against Melissa on the right playing Vesiquen. Now, at first glance, this may seem like it is a very one-sided matchup with that Vesiquen, a grass-type Pokemon, hitting the Greninja for weakness. However, this matchup is really going to come down to, as most matchups do involving Greninja, how quickly you can set up your Greninjas and get up to that break evolution. The combination of Giant Water Shuriken and a Shadow Stitching from Greninja is the way that the frogs are going to want to even out the playing field. And of course, Melissa's Vesiquens do only have 90 HP. So this one is not as simple as it may seem at first glance, but we're going to get into this and see how things play out. Now, Melissa is going to be going first, which is going to be huge. You do get the first evolutions in play, and of course, Greninja is notorious for being an extremely slow deck and pretty clunky in the opening turns too. So Melissa definitely going to want to churn through the deck, get as many dead cards as you can out of the deck, get as many of these irrelevant Pokemon that you're not going to need in the matchup out, especially before the Shadow Stitching comes down from Jared. And Melissa's just going to go ahead and Ultra Ball right off the bat, grab this Combi and put that on the bench. And she does even get the double colorless attached to it, plus an unknown and a Tapu Lele with the Wonder Tag. Probably going to search something out like a Professor Sycamore. Just want to get some more cards drawn this turn, but looks like she's eyeing up an N and just going to fire off the N. Choosing to keep the special charge in hand. It's very intelligent just to keep that special charge around instead of using Sycamore to just churn through the deck and discard that. You definitely want to keep the special charge around since you do only play 4 energy in this Vesiquen deck, just these double colorless energies, and most Greninja decks at the time actually played Enhanced Hammer, which is a card that can discard special energies attached to your opponent's Pokemon. So Melissa having a real grasp of maybe the matchup, but also just how her deck works, choosing to keep that special charge around to recycle those special energies should they hit the discard pile. And was able to find a second Combi off that N, as well as the Klefki, which will use this Wonderlock ability, attach itself as if it were a tool onto that unknown, and then the Farewell Letter to draw a card. The synergy here just being that you can put 2 Pokemon instead of 1 into your discard pile to fuel the Be Revenge, which does 20 damage plus 10 more for each Pokemon in your discard pile. So Melissa definitely wanting to get as many Pokemon into the discard pile, since that is obviously the strategy of the deck, but also since in this matchup you need to be wary of N and Shadow Stitching in the late game, and you don't really want to draw into a bunch of Pokemon you don't want to put on the field. So pretty strong turn from Melissa, and passing things over to Jared, who has double Froakie and a Staryu on the bench. The Staryu is going to eventually evolve into Starmie with the Space Beacon ability, which will allow Jared to recycle water energies from the discard pile. And we see a Brooklet Hill come down, countering that forest of giant plants. So Jared's going to be able to use this Brooklet Hill to search their deck for a water or fighting Pokemon and put it directly to the bench. Greninja, does only play water Pokemon, so probably won't be seeing a fighting Pokemon off of this, but this does 2 things for Jared. This allows them to search the deck, see if there are any important cards prized like Frogadiers or Greninjas, and also gets a replacement Froakie onto the bench. This is a little bit risky because potentially you could get stuck with this many Pokemon in play and then not be able to water duplicates on the following turn for full effect. And we do see a heads-on bubble here, so Jared going to paralyze Melissa's Unknown. And I don't believe Vesiquen decks played any copies of Switch or Olympia or anything like that to reset this Unknown's paralysis and get it out of the active. And a big Sycamore here from Melissa is going to discard a double colorless energy. And she did actually get an additional one attached to the Combi on the bench. So no shortage of energy here for Melissa, continuing to just power through the deck with these unknown Farewell Letters. but I really think it's just going to be a pass at the end of this turn. I don't think this deck plays any way to deal with paralysis, so Melissa might just have to be passing this turn, giving up a crucial turn of tempo back to Greninja, and that's exactly what happens. The turn passes back to Jared, and Jared's going to be looking for one thing this turn and one thing only, and that is a Frogadier to use water duplicates. But this goes back to what I just said previously about now Jared doesn't have the full bench space available to get 3 bench Frogadiers plus the one in the active to get all 4 into play. So getting the second, or I guess the third Froakie, second one on the bench, might have been a little bit preemptive in my opinion. Maybe if you hit Tails on Bubble, it doesn't end up working out that poorly because it does get knocked out, freeing up the space on the bench. But we will see if Jared's able to find another Frogadier. It looks like did draw into 2 off of that Sycamore, so not going to get punished by overbenching, and I guess it was technically kind of the right play, assuming you were potentially hitting Tails on Bubble. So it's not as like it was a bad play or anything, just like a potentially awkward situation. But gonna go ahead and use that water duplicates and finding hopefully the third and fourth Frogadier out of the deck. That would be the ideal turn 2 for Jared here. Taking some time to search through though. I don't know, maybe there's one prized. Yeah, just going to shuffle the deck. So there is one Frogadier prized, and that's really big. Again, this matchup really comes down to how quickly Greninja can set up. You really want to be getting your Greninjas in play, evolving them up, getting them up to that Greninja break. It is effectively like a stage 3 Pokemon. And in the meantime, all of your Pokemon are going to be getting mowed down by this Vesiquen, which continues to just pitch Pokemon to the discard pile. And we see a crucial card in Melissa's hand, this Hex Maniac. So Hex Maniac, when you play it, it will turn off all abilities for Pokemon in play for the turn player. So Melissa won't have any abilities this turn, but this also includes going into your opponent's next turn. So on this turn, Jared has no abilities, meaning that Space Beacon won't be active. If Jared needed something like a Tapu Lele to get a supporter, that would not be available. And Jared is going to promote this Froakie, so that kind of signals to me that maybe there isn't the best hand here. I'm going to attempt to use the Space Beacon, but yet Melissa says, nope, I used Hex Maniac. So the Hex Maniac actually isn't super relevant on this turn, since the Greninja breaks are not in play, but getting it in the discard pile for Melissa is big because now it is a card you can find off of VS Seeker. It is just always in the discard pile. She can just VS Seeker for it at will, and it is kind of importantly where it is easier to find in the discard pile than the deck. So just being able to play it this turn and get it in the discard pile was pretty significant. Meanwhile, Jared did get an Enhanced Hammer, which forces that DCE off of the Vesiquen in the active. Melissa does have the backup Combee with an energy already prepped on it, but definitely want to find a Vesiquen to actually attack with that one on the following turn. And Melissa is down 2 DCEs if I'm not mistaken already. So we know there's a special charge in deck, at least one, might be more, but that was a pretty big Enhanced Hammer, potentially buying Jared even more time. And speaking of time, we see the timer ball. So flipping 2 coins, getting 1 heads. So we'll be able to search for an evolution Pokemon. Have to assume it's another Greninja, and it is. And this is the kind of pivotal turn for Greninja, is the turn after you use water duplicates. And we see an Ace Trainer here. But the turn after you use water duplicates is very impactful because if you only find 1 Greninja or none, that means you're not able to get up to that Greninja break on the following turn. So it's a very, very pivotal turn. You want to find as many Greninjas as you can. And that's why it's so significant to have access to all of your Frogadiers. And then Jared playing this Ace Trainer. This is very much like Roxanne, except that you can play it as long as you're behind on prizes, and the player who plays it gets 6 cards, and your opponent gets 3 cards. So Melissa's only taken 1 prize here, but going to go right down to 3 cards in hand after the Enhanced Hammer. And Jared might be going for another Bubble this turn. That Hex Maniac turning off the Space Beacon from Starmie might have been relevant too, to deny access to a water energy. But Jared did find the Splash energy and does hit heads on another Bubble. So that is huge. Once again, Jared just buying another turn with Bubble and that paralysis. Melissa does find this special charge to shuffle 2 DCEs back into the deck. That's going to be huge. But again, I don't believe there's any way for Melissa to get this Vesiquen out of the active, since you can't obviously retreat while you're paralyzed. You can't attack either. So Melissa might just be stuck again, giving Jared that much more time to set up in this game. And protecting those 2 Greninjas on the bench, very importantly, that, even if Melissa is able to get this Vesiquen out of the active, your Greninjas on the bench probably aren't getting touched unless there's something like an escape rope, at which point you can just throw up your own Froakie. And while Melissa does bench the Oranguru and use Instruct to draw a card, but I don't think there's much else. I think she just passed because that Vesiquen is back unparalyzed. And yep, there is the Space Beacon, discarding the Choice Band. Gonna use this Brooklet Hill. Probably finding just another Froakie at this point. You really just want to get all of your frogs into play so you can continually evolve Pokemon, especially off of that splash energy. But I think just failed it there. Might not have the last Froakie in deck. And this is going to be a turn where Jared wants to find those Greninja breaks. Does fire off a Lysander onto this Combee. So we could take a knockout here. And very importantly, Combee does only have 40 HP. So this Greninja can use the Shadow Stitching attack. Does deal 40 damage. And during Melissa's next turn, she will not have any abilities. This is a one-sided Hex Maniac. And Melissa not going to be able to use this Instruct. Not going to be able to use Shaman or Tapu Lele or any kind of abilities on this turn, thanks to that Shadow Stitching. So Melissa kind of surprisingly on the back foot here. Jared's been able to use all of these kind of tricks from Greninja to stabilize the board, buy back a little bit of time. But Melissa does immediately have the double colorless energy, so we'll be able to take a huge knockout on this Greninja and put Jared down to having only one possible Greninja break in play on the following turn. And she will play a Sycamore as well. Continuing to go through that deck, definitely wants to find some replacement Combees in case this active Vesiquen goes down, and there is one right off the rip. The only real problem here from Melissa is, can't use that. Nope, good catch, Jared. Can't use that farewell letter. The only problem here from Melissa's standpoint is that I believe the only copy of Forest of Giant Plants was already used and discarded by that Brooklet Hill. So it's going to have a little bit of a tense situation where, because these Combees only have 40 HP, they are targets to that Greninja breaks Water Shuriken. They can be knocked out with just a single water energy discarded to that ability. And that could be another way for Jared to potentially take multiple prizes in a turn, kind of even up the prize trade. But yeah, the big thing for Jared here is going to be getting Frogadiers recycled and evolving those 2 Froakies on the bench if you can. You can't really rely on the single Greninja break at this point. There are too many threats from Melissa. She's able to get these knockouts very easily as long as there is an energy and an attacker to be had. That weakness really effective at taking care of these Greninjas. But yeah, just as I'm talking about it, Jared gets a Rescue Stretcher to find one Frogadier from the discard pile, and must have taken one off the prizes because we did see a Repeat Ball, putting the Frogadier from the deck into the hand. And this is pretty much all Jared needed to at least stabilize this board. But off this end, we're going to want to find a Water Energy and the Greninja Break if possible. And you can use Giant Water Shuriken to hit the active, and then follow it up with a Shadow Stitching, which would be really huge. Melissa's going down to 4 cards off of this end, and comboing that with the ability lock from Shadow Stitching could be really huge to deny Melissa access to a Vesiquen and a double colorless energy, which is all she needs to take a knockout on the following turn. But Jared ending themselves just to the 5 cards, so need to find an out to Water Energy and the Greninja Break off of just 5 cards. I see a dive ball and a water energy in hand, I believe. So we should have an out to the Greninja break plus some energies. And we even see the space beacon here. So Jared going to have access to 2 energies, which means we can use that giant water shuriken and actually attach an attack for the turn with those 2 energies. So going to be able to take a really, really pivotal knockout here from Jared. And even up the prize race, we are going to be at 4 prizes each, assuming that they choose to take the knockout on the active. I suppose there's merit to maybe just giant water shurikening the Combi. I feel like you kind of have to deal with this Vesiquen though, so we'll see the 6 damage counters onto the Vesiquen, and then have to imagine we're going to see the shadow stitching here from Miss Greninja. And it's a little bit scary of a situation to be in if you're Jared. The active Greninja break can be knocked out. You did everything you could to kind of deny Melissa with the N plus Shadow Stitching combination. You do see the Vesiquen immediately and a VS Seeker, so Melissa going to be able to get something like a Sycamore pretty easily. But you did everything you could if you're Jared to kind of preemptively prevent this from happening, so really just have to hope that Melissa is not able to find a replacement double colorless this turn. I think I saw at least one in the discard pile plus one of the special charges. There might be a second DCE in the discard pile. There was that enhanced hammer earlier, so I'm not sure how many are in there at this point. And gonna go ahead and use this rescue stretcher, potentially eyeing down some bees to shuffle back in the deck. I think this is pretty heads up. You want to get as many attackers as you can. It's always kind of a funny interaction with cards like Rescue Stretcher and Revitalizer in this Vesiquen deck, which does more damage for each Pokemon you have in your discard pile. You're like, well, why would I want to put Pokemon back if I do more damage for them in the discard pile? Well, you need Pokemon to attack with. That's pretty important as well. So the Rescue Stretcher going to find a couple Combis and a Vesiquen, put those back in the deck. And then we're going to see the Sycamore most likely. And we see the Choice Band on the active. It's potentially relevant if Jared plays a Tapu Lele, so no reason to not attach it. That Vesiquen already has free retreat anyway, so no reason not to attach it. And we see the Sycamore and getting some Pokemon, a Lysander. I think we did see the double colorless energy, so going to be able to take this knockout here, and there's an Ultra Ball to go and find a replacement Combi. So Melissa just keeping up with this relentless pressure from these bees, finds the Combi. She's just skimming through the deck. I'm not sure I saw another double colorless, might have missed one. But we definitely want to make sure we have access to at least 2 more of those. Jared is not going to be able to use a giant water shuriken on the following turn since there are no Greninjas in play. So Melissa's not in a ton of danger on the following turn, but does get the knockout here. That is super impactful to deny access to that giant water shuriken on the following turn. And Melissa going down to 3 prizes. And there is the promotion of the Frogadier, draw for turn. I don't see too much in Jared's hand. Is that an Ultra Ball, a couple energies, a Greninja? I can't tell what that 4th card is. Hopefully it's a supporter. I think it's an Ultra Ball though, which is definitely not what Jared wants to see. So if there is a Froakie in the deck, we could potentially go for another bubble. But I'm not seeing any basic water Pokemon in the deck at all, so Jared is going to fail that Brooklet Hill. And I'm not sure what the best course of action from Jared here is. If this hand is as dead as it is, you can't really just hit this Vesiquen. I guess we could maybe retreat with Jared. Ninja Stars the water energy. Maybe if you Ninja Star the card hard enough, it will turn into a giant water shuriken. But nope, going to Space Beacon away a water to get 2 more waters. And, we can see the Ultra Ball here, discarding those 2. And does Jared play a Tapu Lele? Nope, just going to get another Greninja maybe. So I guess Jared's idea here is I'm going to evolve both my Frogadiers, get 2 Greninjas in play, and Shadow Stitching you. And on the next turn, I have to play to top deck a draw supporter. And if I top deck a draw supporter, I can get into a Greninja break, finish off the active with a giant water shuriken, and then maybe Moonlight Slash or something. You need to kind of stabilize for the next turn, play as if you have a live card off the top deck. And that might be what we see Jared go for. And you also have the splash energy down, which means that the entire Greninja line will return to the hand, meaning Jared could go for a bubble if all else fails, since the Froakie and the Frogadier and Greninja will all be returned to the hand if they're knocked out with that splash energy attached. So that might be what Jared's eyeing up here. Did use the Shadow Stitching, so doing everything they can to kind of play to the outs that the deck is giving them. That is kind of the tale as old as time with Greninja, unfortunately. I've played so much Greninja myself, so I feel the pain of looking at a dead hand and saying it might be Bubble and Pray. But anyway, Melissa does find that second special charge, put 2 double colorless back into the deck, and this active Vesiquen is going to take a knockout this turn that's already on board. I think Melissa is just going to be wanting to find a Vesiquen to protect that Combi on the bench. Ooh, and eyeing up the Hex Maniac in the discard pile. Is there a VS Seeker in hand? There is. So we're going to see the Hex Maniac as well as this knockout, meaning that Jared does not have access to the Giant Water Shuriken on the following turn once again. Hex knockout year ago, and Jared is down to this last Greninja in play. Once again, we saw that splash energy activating to get the entire Greninja evolution line back in hand, and Jared top decks an N. Oh my god, Jared drawing exactly what was needed to keep this game going. And we do see the Froakie hit the bench and the N. You love to see the playing to your outs into the immediate reward from Melissa with the heart, into the immediate reward from the top of the deck, giving you just what you need to stay in the game. And the Hex Maniac is doubly important here because it turns off that Starmie Space Beacon, right? So Jared is not able to find an energy guaranteed to use Bubble on this turn. So not only do we have to find an energy off an end of 4, but you also have to hit heads on Bubble for the 3rd time in the game. So this is going to be a very sketchy turn from Jared. We could find something like another Enhanced Hammer. Not sure how many of those Jared plays, but gonna have to see a really big 4 cards here from Jared. Not seeing anything quite yet. There's a Water Energy, so we're at least going to go to Bubble Town. I think there might be a Field Blower. Can't quite see. Jared's kind of holding it close to their hand. Dive Ball and a Field Blower. So Dive Ball could get us the break here, but the break doesn't really do much. Ooh, we see the Frogadier. I wonder, maybe does Jared have 2 breaks prize potentially? We only saw the 1 hit the discard pile that I saw. There's no benefit really to evolving into the break this turn, since you can't use Giant Water Shuriken anyway. You could just be wasting that evolution. Oh, there's a second Dive Ball in hand. Okay, so the second Dive Ball could find the Greninja break in the future. I have to imagine we're going to see the Bubble here, but we could actually see just going all in on this Greninja, which is what we see, and kind of Jared saying, I really hope this N sticks. You're going to have access to abilities since I have to Moonlight Slash to take the knockout. And returning the energy to hand makes sense here, since Jared is able to have that energy for the following turn to once again go into a Desperation Bubble. But here we go. Jared takes the knockout and really hoping that the N sticks for Melissa, but we see lots of good cards in Melissa's hand. There's an Acrobike to see the 2 cards off the top of the deck. We have a Shaman EX in hand, which you probably don't want to play at this point. It is a 2 prize liability. We also have Instruct Oranguru to give us 1 additional card, maybe more, depending on how many Melissa wants to play. Does bench the Shaman, though, so set up for 5. There's a Sycamore, a Vesiquen, DCE, so that means we're going to see a knockout here, guaranteed, and this is not where Jared wants to be. We're looking again at a potential Bubble and Pray from Jared next turn, and Melissa just continuing to churn through the deck And she had not played a single Shaman that I'd seen yet, so plenty of live cards. Also, those Acrobikes all being live cards off of the end, plus the Instruct from Oranguru. So this deck, very end-proof, as long as it does have access to those abilities. So there's the Bee Revenge for the knockout. Poor Froakie going up and staring down this terrifying bee. And what is Jared's out here? I think once again it's going to be bubble and pray. It's going to be bubble and hit a lot of heads. And you even have to find a replacement Froakie, because the second you stop using bubble, you can't deny the knockout. So that Vesiquen is just going to immediately swing for the game. So Jared gonna soldier on, play it out, see what we can possibly do. End of 3. You got to hit some really good cards off this end to 3 and hope Melissa draws absolutely nothing off the end to 1. End to 1 is always great when you can stick your opponent to just one card off of that, but of course it really isn't one card, is it? You see the top deck to make it 2. You have Instruct from Oranguru to draw up to 3. So, without the combination of this N into Shadow Stitching, it's going to just be an N, hope you draw a bunch of bad cards even off this Instruct, and hope I hit heads on bubble. So this is the game right here. Does Jared hit heads on bubble or not? Do we keep this game moving beyond this point? And it really just comes down to that. Is it going to be bubble? Is it going to be a Tails and Greninja gets smoked by this Vesiquen? Dive ball for Greninja, and it comes down to this. What is the result of this coin flip? There's the bubble, and it is a not there. Oh, it's a Tails. There is the game. Melissa going to take it with Vesiquen over the hapless Greninja and move on to 2-0.